Hi, this is David Thornburg, President and CEO of the Committee of 70, Pennsylvania's longstanding advocate for better elections and better government. I'm coming to you on our Studio C70 communications platform live in front of our virtual background, which is the Volkswagen. Hope to see you actually live and in person from the Volkswagen. This is one of a series of interviews that we've been doing for candidates for public office who are standing for election or re-election this time around, hoping that this is useful to voters across the Commonwealth, particularly at a time when in-person events are just not possible. So sit back and enjoy this interview. I am pleased to have with us today Attorney General Josh Shapiro. Josh, welcome.
David, good to see you.
These are challenging times in many ways, and I appreciate the chance to chat with you for a little bit. Let's start off kind of a warm-up question. You have run for office, I'm going to guess, half dozen times, give or take. This has to be the most extraordinary context in which you stood for public office, I got to guess, in your career.
Well, it certainly is. And I will say candidly, I'm focused on doing my job as Pennsylvania's Attorney General day in and day out. And, not really focused as much on the politics or really at all, just trying to do my part to protect the people of Pennsylvania. We're obviously dealing with twin crises right now, a public health crisis and also an economic crisis. We've lost nearly 30% of our workforce as a result of this public health crisis. So we're doing our part, both with the legal authority I have and the expanded legal authority I have under the governor's declaration to protect consumers, to make sure that that they're looked after, and to also make sure that we continue to do, the day job, if you will, right? Battling the heroin and fentanyl and opioid crisis, keeping kids safe, taking on the big fights, making sure that we're, dealing with public corruption, all of the different issues that we work on day in and day out. And then also just trying to solve problems, right, David? I mean, I know you know this from your relationship with government throughout the years. In times of crisis, people just look to you to solve problems. And so a big chunk of my day is solving challenges and problems for different people. And so I feel like, as I've always felt throughout my public service career, if you do a good job, if you meet people where they are and tackle the big challenges that they face, and I'm not sure we've ever faced bigger ones than we face today, certainly during my public service time, then you're bound to be rewarded at the ballot box. And so, like I said, I focus on doing my job, and I think the politics tends to take care of itself.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question folks might be interested in. You are a public figure, but also a father, family, community leader. I'm curious in this extraordinary time what you have been able to do as a community member to help folks in your community, not as Attorney General Josh Shapiro, but as citizen Josh Shapiro, or son Josh Shapiro, or father Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, it's a good question, David. I mean, I think it goes back a little bit to what I said a moment ago about, solving problems, right? I have found that more and more, just, if I take a walk around the neighborhood to clear my head, or even just to do phone calls while I'm walking to get some exercise, people will stop you and just want to know, from a proper physical distance, and just want to know that they're going to be okay. I mean, I think for a lot of people, addressing their mental health issues, their anxiety issues, and letting them know that it's going to be okay. We are going to beat this. We're going to get through this. That's really important. I think it's incredibly important to do that for your children. I'm the father of 4 children, all school age. They're dealing with so much anxiety and challenges right now. 2 of our children are being robbed of their graduation year. I realize there are people facing many bigger problems than that, but these are important things to the kids. And so you want to make sure they understand the seriousness of this, but you also want to make sure that they have confidence that we're going to beat it, and we're going to be okay, and that you're able to, address that. And then I just think finally it's a lot of connecting dots for people. So I'll give you an example. We have a PPE shortage in Pennsylvania. And I have a good friend who makes all the uniforms for Major League Baseball. And, he's chomping at the bit to do something to help, right? He can't make Major League Baseball uniforms right now. There's not much use for it. And we worked together and came up with an idea where he would convert his factory into making PPE. And now you have not just Philadelphia police, but, you know, poor folks who can't otherwise afford to buy masks, walking around with masks made up of the Philadelphia Phillies uniforms. Now, I didn't go and manufacture them on the front lines, but I was able to connect the dots to help people get what they needed.
Yeah.
So there's a whole host of issues that maybe aren't within the purview of being the Attorney General that we're working on day in and day out to comfort people, to aid them, to get them the tools and resources that they need. And, you know, for as exhausting as it can be sometimes, I'm grateful for the opportunity that people look to me for answers and that we're able to provide them.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier you're doing your job and you'll let the politics take care of itself. That is made easier in that you're running unopposed in the Democratic primary.
Yeah.
So this is, to extend the baseball analogy, this is a little bit of batting practice for the main event in November. You've also been in the job for, well, not quite 4 years, but it'll be almost 4 by the time we get there. Share with folks maybe the easier question, which is what accomplishments, 2, 3 accomplishments you're most proud of over the last 4 years, and then maybe the harder question is what have you learned as a public leader, as an attorney general? How have you been tested in the job?
I guess that the answers to both those questions are intertwined, and so let me take a hack at trying to answer them together. And if you're not satisfied with my answer, David, you can ask me again. I mean, look, I think I have learned in this job, and we can back it up with specific examples, that you've got to have the courage to take on the biggest fights, right? I mean, we took 2 warring healthcare institutions, massive and wonderful healthcare institutions in UPMC and Highmark, who for 10 years couldn't work together. And as a result of that, we were coming up on the end of a deadline where 2 million Pennsylvanians were going to lose health insurance. And these companies wouldn't talk to one another. And after, I think, 3 or 4 governors and 4 or 5 attorneys general, I got them around the table. And after an intense negotiation, we got the job done. Those were 2 huge fights, or 2 huge institutions that we were able to, you know, end the fight and bring them together. We took on the most powerful organization on the planet, the Roman Catholic Church, when they were systematically abusing children and covering it up in a conspiracy and cover up that went from Pennsylvania diocese all the way to the Vatican. And we proved that we not only had the legal mettle to take on the fight, but we had the courage to do it. What I've learned in this job is that you have to be willing to take on the big fights. There can be no sacred cows. Nobody gets a free pass. We've arrested 60 public officials for public corruption, Democrats and Republicans. No one gets a pass in my administration. You have to be willing to have the courage to do that. And in the process, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the team that you have around you. And you learn to shut out the noise and the stuff that swirls around social media every day. But by the same token, you learn to listen to the people of Pennsylvania that really matter. You learn to listen to the store clerk at Sheetz that talks to you about her fear of losing health care. You learn to listen to 83-year-old Bob Kirby in Bethlehem, who, after 70 years of carrying around that weight, shared that he had been abused as a child by a predator priest. And by listening to those people, you're able to be strengthened, you're able to guide your team, and you're able to deliver results. Look, David, I realize there are people that agree and disagree with the things I've done, right? I can't please all the people all the time. But no one can deny the fact that we've taken on the biggest fights. We've stood up for the people of Pennsylvania, and we've delivered real results time and time again.
You have been, let's say, much, in my observation, knowing attorneys general over the years, you have been more active than, let's say, most on, I'll call it the national political scene, the national policy scene.
Yeah.
Explain to folks why that makes sense for the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as opposed to, I suppose, the alternative is you just stick to your knitting, you stay within the 67 counties,
Yeah.
you do your job, you manage your team.
Yeah, well, it's a great question, but I think in order to do this job effectively, you have to do the work I've done on a national basis. And let me explain what I mean by that. I said, not just when I was running, but the day I was sworn in, that the rule of law applies to all, no matter what you look like or where you come from or who you love or who you pray to or who you choose not to pray to. And the reality is, I said, when the rule of law is under attack, whether by a dealer on the street corner or some multinational corporation or the federal government, I would step in to hold them accountable. So how can I sit idly by when the federal government does something that is unlawful, that undermines, for example, Article 2, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution that says you have a right to clean air and pure water? How can I sit by and allow that to happen when you have a specific constitutional right to clean air and pure water? I can't. It is part of my job responsibilities. Now, for those who are going to say, oh, you only sued Donald Trump because you don't like him, let me just put that to rest. If I sued Donald Trump every time I disagreed with a policy that he put forth, I'd probably have sued him 1,000 times. I only take him to court when he violates the law. And by the way, just look at the cases we've brought and those cases we've won. I would also encourage you to take a look at the cases we haven't brought, right? When nearly every Democratic attorney general ran to court to sue the president over his border wall issue. Remember, he said he was going to take funds from the Department of Defense to build the border wall. I didn't sue. And actually, I got a lot of grief from my party for that. But my point was, I said, look, I am a lawyer. I need to have standing to bring a case. I need to show harm to the people of Pennsylvania. Otherwise, I can't justify going into court and affixing the good name of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on that. And because a dollar hadn't been taken from the Commonwealth, I didn't sue. So I only go to court when I think the law has been violated. And I only go to court when the people of Pennsylvania are being harmed. It's not about politics. It's not about personality. It's not about whether I like or don't like Donald Trump. I've made clear who I'm supporting in this presidential race. This is about the rule of law and defending it wherever the attacks come from.
Got it. So let's roll forward. Things go your way in November. You enter a second term as Attorney General of the Commonwealth. What's on the second term agenda? I'm presuming that it's got to be shaped by the economic and the healthcare crisis and the circumstances that we're going through. But what's on your short list, as of May 2020 for what you'd hope to start accomplishing in January 2021?
Look, I think you alluded to the fact, the coronavirus, the effect of this pandemic will continue to be felt into my second term. So obviously we're going to be dealing with that. But let's set that aside, because I think the spirit of your question is, what are the other issues that you're going to be working on? Obviously, I'm very limited in what I can talk about in terms of ongoing criminal investigations. But I can assure you that we will not be done all of them by November. There is a lot to come and a lot of things that I think are pretty explosive that people are going to want to know about. And we're going to hold very powerful people and institutions accountable for some serious wrongdoing. And so you can expect that a lot more of that kind of work will continue. You can expect that I will see through the work to hold the pharmaceutical companies accountable civilly for their role in this heroin opioid crisis, which claims the lives of 12 Pennsylvanians every single day. I think, David, we may have talked about this in the past. I'm one of 4 attorneys general who's negotiated a global settlement with the major opioid manufacturers and distributors, and trying to return $50 billion to the people of this country and use that for much needed treatment and other related services. So a lot more work is going to go into that. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get that deal done in time. Obviously, when you're talking about $50 billion and 50 states and plus the territories, there's a lot of different people around the table, but we're proud to be leading that on behalf of the people of Pennsylvania. There's going to be a lot more work on criminal justice reform. We launched a conviction integrity unit maybe about 6 months ago now. I've lost a little bit of track of time, but
we all have.
Yeah. So we want to continue to see that through and make sure that more cases are brought through our conviction integrity unit and continue to reform our criminal justice system. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, a lot more work that I intend to keep doing for the people of Pennsylvania.
Sure. Another forward-looking question, and I get, and I think everyone listening should understand what you have to say about the Attorney General doesn't have the ability unanimously to chart his or her own course. But that having been said, if you look ahead, or if you think about things with which that you've considered in the past, are there, on the one hand, ideas, proposals, initiatives, policies that you would absolutely always support no matter what? On the flip side, are there all of the same that you would never support? Just to give some folks some sense of your guide rails, as it were.
I think it is very hard in government service in general, and in particular in this job, to draw sort of bright lines, right? I mean, you have to be willing to examine the facts, examine the evidence, apply the law, and follow it where it goes. And I don't think people want their attorney general to, be doctrinaire on specific things. There are things that I think I am known for that I have consistently fought for throughout my life. So, for example, I have consistently stood up and always fought to defend a women's right to choose, and women's justice, and women's freedom, and reproductive rights. In fact, we were in the United States Supreme Court just last week on behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, fighting to protect contraceptive access for millions of women, not just here in Pennsylvania, but across the country. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think I've been known for. And there are other issues like that as well. I would say on the other side, you will never see me back down from a big fight. The bigger the institution, the more powerful institution, the more intense the cover up, the crime, the corruption, the more it makes me want to get after it. So you'll never see me back down from some powerful institution. I think, David, a big part of the work you do at 70 is holding big institutions accountable, making sure that we root out corruption, making sure that we operate by the highest ethical standards. And that's really at the core of what I do and what my team does. It's one of the reasons why we hired the first ever one of the first ever chief ethics czars in the Office of Attorney General. And so we're going to continue to do our work in the AG's office to, fight those big fights and make sure that people are protected.
Yeah. Let me wrap up with this question, and then I got a little closing outro, as it were. But you've had a substantial career in public service to date. You served in the General Assembly. You served as a county commissioner. Now you've been Attorney General. Probably in the course of that time, and this speaks to an issue that we care a lot about, that people's trust and faith in government, broadly speaking, probably continues to erode, sometimes more precipitously than others. Yeah. Does that sync with your sense as you wander the highways and byways, and what do we do about it?
It is one of the most disappointing parts of government service. And while I won't speak about any specifics, I can tell you just from the public corruption work that we do, whether it results in a criminal charge or not, I oftentimes leave those situations scratching my head going, how can we have public officials behaving this way? Right? Why can't we just get back to the days where we fought about tax policy or healthcare policy and had honest debates, right? About with people with real differences. And that's cool. That's the way the system should be, right? We should have these spirited debates. We should, get back to those kinds of conversations. And we are robbed of that when we have corrupt public officials. We are robbed of that when we have officials who are lining their own pockets or acting, even if they're not acting in a criminal matter, acting in an unethical way. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us. Look, if you're watching and you're for me, I appreciate that. And I want you to get out and I want you to vote for me. But I also want you to hold me and every other Democrat, if you support other Democrats, accountable. And for Republicans who are opposed to me, fine. And others who are opposed to me, fine. But let's all agree that Democrats, Republicans, Independents can come together and elevate our political discourse and elevate the quality of people who are serving in public life, and demand that they be ethical and demand that they follow the law. And then after we have that baseline, then we can have the arguments about the different policies that we want to have. I try to just lead by example, to conduct myself in an honorable, ethical way. For my biggest detractors, they can hopefully walk away knowing that I'm doing my best, even if they disagree with me. And to my most, strongest supporters out there, they can know that they've got an honest, good attorney general fighting his ass off every single day to protect them. And that is what I do every day. And that's what we should demand every public official do, no matter what side of the aisle they're on.
Sounds like a pretty good closing statement. Thank you for joining us, Attorney General Josh Shapiro. Hoping to be reelected Attorney General Josh Shapiro in the primary election coming up June 2nd and the general on November 3rd. Just a quick note for those of you who are watching, Committee of 70 is very active right now, helping voters to prepare for the June 2nd and then a November 3rd election, particularly challenging in these COVID-19 times. We're strongly encouraging you to think about voting by mail. The deadline for that is May 26th to apply for your mail-in ballot. There's been pretty good response, but there are pockets that folks that are maybe not yet convinced, and we'll do anything we can to convince you. We also have a world-class voter guide on our site at 70.org, where you can learn about not only Josh Shapiro, but other candidates, and make your picks before you sit down to vote, whether that's at your kitchen table or on election day. So please take us up on that. That is what we're here for. Again, Josh Shapiro, thank you for joining us, and good luck to you, and we'll see you along the trail.
Great. Thanks, David. Stay well. Be safe.
Thank you.